And welcome to another edition of Total Sports Radio. My name is Justin Godsey here, bringing you guys another edition of the NXT Wrestling Review. We're here bringing you guys a show that happened just last night. I am a day ahead of you guys of making this review. I know there are I think a couple of people have actually uploaded their NXT reviews for the week, for this week. This whole week I've been sick. I've not been feeling as good as of late. I took a day off from work because I was just not feeling great. So I took a day to be bedridden, get enough a lot of sleep as possible so I can feel good for the rest of the week and close out the week strong. But I'm here doing the NXT review. YouTube videos are something I'm going to be doing for you guys on a constant basis. The NXT reviews have been doing pretty good for me in the early goings of these, so hopefully you guys are still sticking around and still watching the videos, because I am be putting a lot of time, a lot of effort into these kinds of videos because I love professional wrestling, and this is going to be a big YouTube channel for you wrestling fans out there. So today, guys, we're here covering the August 5th edition of NXT, which took place at Full Sail University. As always, one of my favorite crowds in all professional wrestling. Full Sail University, NXT is the show to watch. So let's get right into today's matches, and what a show that we have today. We have an ultimate build-up for NXT Takeover Brooklyn, and kicking off the show, we have easily the best women's matchup to start, the show, the best women's matchup probably in 2015 so far, and that is Charlotte versus Bayley. Now, there is a small storyline behind it. Bayley has came back and made a big role since her injury. I think she defeated Dana Brooke. I think she also defeated Emma. I know I'm missing about a week or so of NXT reviews, so I do apologize for that. But Bayley has made a big impact since coming back from her hand injury, and she said that she wants to be the dominant, diva or women's competitor down in NXT right now, but she has yet to beat the best. She has, not defeated Charlotte, she has not defeated Becky Lynch, she has not defeated Sasha Banks, but Bayley made an offer to take on Charlotte a couple of weeks ago on NXT following her victory, I want to say against Dana Brooke, and she said she wants to take on Charlotte. Last week, Charlotte defeated Dana Brooke, and this week we are now seeing Charlotte versus Bayley, and this is going to be a lot of fun. I was so excited once this match was confirmed. I thought that this could be a match that we see at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, and at the end of this matchup, I thought we could end up seeing a rematch at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, but now things have changed, because later on the night, I'll get into that here in a little bit. But this match had had a pretty slow start to it. But there was a lot of mutual respect between Charlotte and Bayley, but like I said, it was a very slow start. Bayley doing a little bit of a tribute to Sami Zayn doing his bottom rope move, but she did like a drop kick to Charlotte on the outside. But there was a lot of ground technique in the early goings or in the big portion of this matchup. A lot of ground technique and a lot of reversals from both women. But the match really did start getting good in the near to the end of the matchup, where we see a Bayley Hurricanrana. Charlotte would eventually put Bayley in the figure 8, but she was not able to bridge. Charlotte was not able to bridge into that into the figure 8, so Bayley was able to reverse it and get the upper hand on Charlotte. Bayley also did multiple Bayley to bellies to try and completely down Charlotte, but that was not to be. But what really did it in for Charlotte was that top row Bayley to belly to put the victory in Bayley's way, and this is a big victory for the career of Bayley, because Bayley has always taken that, she was always that, that diva or that women's competitor in NXT right now to not get that big push. We've seen big pushes of Charlotte, and we saw a big push for, Sasha Banks. We've seen them, head to head, week after week. We saw great matches from, Sasha Banks and Charlotte. NXT needs to mix it up a little bit, and we all know what Bayley is about. She's a fantastic in-ring competitor. I am personally a big fan of Bayley, and now that Triple H and NXT executives are now looking at Bayley as, a woman that they can really trust and really carry the NXT division, I think that this is the best way to go about it. Get Bayley into that, that spotlight in NXT and have her carry this NXT division, because right now there's three Divas competitors up at the main roster now that have originally were in NXT: Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks. They are now up at the main roster right now doing this Divas Revolution. I think that it's going to be kind of silly if the WWE only goes, part-time with this whole Divas Revolution storyline just to put Charlotte, Becky Lynch, and Sasha Banks back down in NXT for a couple more weeks and just have this complete, Divas Revolution just, go down and plunder. I want to see more Charlotte up at the main roster. Charlotte should have been already up at the main roster, 5 months ago, and that's not yet to happen. I think Bayley should have already been up the main roster before Charlotte, before Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks, because Bayley has done a whole lot more, but she has not won the NXT Women's Championship, and that's what the NXT, executives and, their whole meetings are all about, and this is the opportunity that Bayley needs, and that's what NXT is doing right now. I see it, and I see Bayley end up winning with the NXT Women's Championship in the near future. But going down the line for the week, or going out into, this whole women's, championship title picture, Sasha Banks is now part of Team Bad, Beautiful and Dangerous with Naomi and my girl Tamina Snuka. Sasha Banks has taken, a step back. She's a dominant, in-ring competitor at NXT. Now she's up at the main roster where we only see, the submission sorority with Charlotte, Becky Lynch taking on the Bellas. We don't see anything from Team Bad. That's what I think it's very much of a silly situation for Sasha Banks. She's now taking a step back, and now that she's up at the main roster, we we have not seen her do a lot. It's always between like Becky Lynch and Brie Bella or Charlotte versus Nikki. That's all we're seeing right now. I want to see more Sasha Banks too, and I think the best way to go about it is to put Sasha Banks a little bit more involved. And now that we do have a storyline ahead now, Bayley, following this matchup, goes to Mr. William Regal himself. I'm a huge fan of William Regal. I always show the guy a lot of respect. That's why I call him Mr. William Regal. She goes to William Regal and asks for an NXT women's matchup at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, but William Regal denies it, and that she is not the only women right now on the roster, NXT women's roster, that deserves a title match. So, next week on NXT, headlining the entire show, we're going to have a women's matchup between Bayley and Becky Lynch to determine the number one contender for Sasha Banks' title at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. And I can say right now that this is going to be Bayley's opportunity. Back-to-back weeks taking down the submission sorority, taking down Charlotte this week, and next week I can see her taking down Becky Lynch. But this is going to be a more epic matchup than we saw this week against Charlotte. I am so excited for next week's show that we get to see a lot of technique from Bayley. We could see a lot more, and more, interesting matchup with Becky Lynch. I think these two divas are going to go at it. They're going to leave it all in the ring next week, and I cannot wait to review next week's show. So Bayley, Becky Lynch next week headlining the show. So let's continue on into the NXT event. Next two matches actually are two matches I can just say they were squash matches. Baron Corbin took on Steve Cutler, an easy, 10 to 15 second match. I think Baron Corbin, the whole thing is getting boring now. I am not, if I see a Baron Corbin matchup, I can just go either, get something to eat, get something to drink. I can do a lot of different things in 10-15 seconds, but his matches are not really worth watching anymore. They're only squash matches. That's why I think the whole Bull Dempsey Baron Corbin thing was a little bit more exciting than what Baron Corbin has been doing in the ring the past couple of weeks, months. It's just nothing is exciting to me about Baron Corbin right now. I mean, I'm a Corbin fan. I truly am. This guy deserves to have that villain look to him because he has that villain look to him. But NXT is not doing anything to benefit him. He's putting him in 15-second squash matches. We're not seeing any kind of technique from Baron Corbin. He's just giving the end of days to these random competitors. I know last week it was Sorensen. This week it's a guy named Steve Cutler. I mean, Baron Corbin is just not getting used to his full potential in NXT, and there's nothing really much I can say about his matches. I want to say, this match was great, this match was awesome, but they're not entertaining. There's nothing to them. They're 15 seconds long. I can down a bag of Doritos faster than his matches. I mean, geez, it's just not entertaining enough right now. So Baron Corbin, Steve Cutler. Baron Corbin wins with the end of days, and that's all I can say about the match. Next up, we had a Tyler Breeze. Tyler Breeze is one of my competitors. He's a cocky guy. He thinks he's he's the prince of NXT. Walks around with the whole selfie stick. Wearing we all know what his attire is about. He kind of looks like John Morrison a little bit. And honestly, I want to see more Tyler Breeze. He's an excellent in-ring competitor. I expect a whole lot from him. And what better way to do it is then on NXT Takeover Brooklyn, we're going to see a huge match. Following today's victory, or yesterday's victory over this, random NXT development guy, Tyler Breeze just assaulted the guy. This made him look easy, and, he was, he's been, going down, and bothering William Regal the past week after week after week, asking for an opponent for NXT Takeover Brooklyn, and tonight we finally get that. And following the matchup against the NXT Development Superstar, I didn't even know what the guy's name was before the match was even over. The match was like 15 seconds longer than the Baron Corbin Steve Cutler matchup. But Tyler Breeze was standing in the ring talking to his selfie stick for no apparent reason. Then we hear William Regal come out to ringside, and we get to hear the opponent for Tyler Breeze at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, and it's Mr. Jushin Thunder Liger. I've known this for the past couple of weeks. I did read a dirt sheet. It's all over Wikipedia. Yes, I did look at Wikipedia for the official card. I know I missed about 2 weeks of NXT reviews, so I had to catch up and see if there was any matches announced, and we did see Jushin Thunder Liger, but the official announcement was not yet set in stone until yesterday's show. And what better way to put Tyler Breeze in a match against Mr. Lucha Libre himself, Jushin Thunder Liger, a former WCW cruiserweight champion. I think he also won the TV championship. I gotta go back and confirm that, but I know he won the WCW cruiserweight championship, and he was just so exciting. I love the Jushin Thunder Liger matches. I wanted to see Jushin Thunder Liger in person, and growing up, I'm a huge fan of the High Flyers, the Lucha Libres. I'm a huge fan of Mysterio, Ultimo Dragon, Jushin Thunder Liger coming to NXT, coming to WWE. He should be in the WWE Hall of Fame. I know there's a lot of WCW superstars coming into the WWE Hall of Fame, but Jushin Thunder Liger there, he deserves it, and I would love to hear his Hall of Fame speech. I'm just a big fan of Jushin Thunder Liger, and I cannot wait for a Tyler Breeze Jushin Thunder Liger matchup at NXT Takeover Brooklyn. This card is going to be stacked. Now, following that, we do have a couple of promos. I'm going to put both of these promos together, and it's Michael Cole and Byron Saxton interviewing both. It was Michael Cole interviewing Kevin Owens, Byron Saxton interviewing Finn Balor, and now Kevin Owens was the one to really initiate this whole rivalry between the two. Kevin Owens saying that the whole Tokyo fight match in which he lost his NXT Championship to Finn Balor was a fluke. Kevin Owens did say that he did apologize to William Regal for hitting him during the contract signing a couple of weeks ago, and Michael Cole was pretty much giving him all the hard questions. I love that. I love this interview for multiple reasons, and how confident and how Michael Cole stood his ground. I do give him credit for that, but I'm not the biggest Michael Cole fan out there. I'm a huge Kevin Owens guy. But what really signed me off and said, "Damn, this was awesome," was the fact that Kevin Owens issued a challenge to Finn Balor. Kevin Owens says that he is concerned that William Regal will corrupt the referee to have Kevin Owens not get his title back. So Kevin Owens goes, "This is how we're going to do it. I want that NXT title above the ring." So I'm like, ladder match. And that's what Kevin Owens offers Finn Balor. He goes, "I don't want a referee there. I don't want a corrupt referee where I get screwed out of my championship. We can end up seeing another, Montreal screw job since Kevin Owens is from Montreal. He doesn't want to see another Montreal screw job, so he wants to put the title in the middle and high above the ring, so that all you have to do to win is climb the ladder and become the NXT champion." And not only is that was accepted later on by Finn Balor when he was interviewed by Byron Saxton, this also marks the second ladder match in NXT TakeOver history. The first one coming back at the first ever NXT TakeOver event, in which we saw Adrian Neville become the champion on his dominant reign as the NXT champion. He defeated Bo Dallas, and now we get to see a second ladder match between Kevin Owens and Finn Balor for the second time in NXT TakeOver history. And Byron Saxton did ask Finn Balor, will we see the Beast unleashed at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn? And Finn Balor says, we'll just have to wait and see. And that sold me on, I've got to see this event. Hopefully that this match really lives up to the standards. I'm off on that Saturday because it's the day before SummerSlam. Hopefully that this was so worth it, that this whole event right now, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn, is going to be worth it. I hope this show is better than all the past NXT takeovers, because not only do we have a ladder match, we got Jushin Thunder Liger making his appearance at NXT, his WWE debut against Tyler Breeze. This is huge. Huge, huge, huge. We got Bayley versus Becky Lynch next week to determine the number one contender for Sasha Banks. Huge. 3 legitimate matches already named, or potentially named. We still got to wait for the Bayley-Becky Lynch outcome. Already put forward for NXT Takeover Brooklyn. So NXT is going really hard to build up their match card for Takeover Brooklyn, but the show is still not over yet. We still have a couple more matches, but following the whole interview process with Kevin Owens and Finn Balor, we get a promo from Apollo Crews, aka known as Yuha Nation, and this is a guy who I do have a lot of hype over. I saw a couple of his highlight reels when he was appearing at Dragon Gate. He's a high flyer, but he's also a power competitor. You rarely see kind of guys like an Apollo Crews come into the professional wrestling world. A guy who is he's a powerhouse, but can also do some high flying maneuvers. We saw him doing backflips in his promo. He now has a new name. He was once known as Yuha Nation. Now he's known as Apollo Crews. And hopefully that NXT does not just give him the Samoa Joe treatment. Put him and makes a huge impact in his NXT debut. Then all of a sudden he's facing off against guys like Rhino, Steve Cutler, Jesse Sorensen, and just have these squash matches. I want to see Apollo Crews used to his full ability. I do have a lot on Apollo Crews. I'm a big fan of his highlight film. I can't say I'm a huge fan of his as a personal wrestling fan. I have not seen a whole lot about him. I want to see what he's really truly made of. I want to see a legitimate matchup for him at NXT Takeover Brooklyn, because he has announced in this promo that he will be debuting at NXT Takeover Brooklyn on the 22nd of August, and this is going to be an exciting NXT card at Takeover Brooklyn. I said it like 1,000 times in this video. I am so excited to see what Apollo Crews is made of in the 3 potential matches that has already been announced. We just have to wait for the Bayley-Becky Lynch outcome. So not only that continues off and that finishes off the promos. We did have a Bull Dempsey weight loss promo. These were just silly. It was so stupid, a waste of time. I am not a fan of it. Bull Dempsey, following his whole Baron Corbin rivalry, has taken a huge step back. He's into this whole weight loss thing now with William Regal. He's either backstage, beating up vending machines, or he's eating these, Tostitos chips on the couch. And William Regal said it's time for him to get back into shape, because we all saw that matchup with Tyler Breeze, with Breeze outrun Bull Dempsey and he was getting cramps. It's just nothing was entertaining. I think Bull Dempsey needs to be more of a Manu kind of character when Manu was a part of the Priceless back in around 2008, 2009, as that big higher gun for Priceless, Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase. I think that's Bull Dempsey's legitimate role now in professional wrestling, if he's going to go up to the main roster at all, is to be that third powerhouse guy in a stable. So I think Bull Dempsey deserves to be in a stable, but in a more dominating fashion. Maybe he can be part of the Wyatt family. Maybe, maybe not. Just throwing out some fun, some fun things out there. But we have 2 matches remaining here on our review here for NXT for the 5th show on August 5th, 2015. We had a tag team matchup between Dawson and Wilder versus the Hype Bros, Zack Ryder and Mojo Rawley. Basic tag team match. But Dawson and Wilder coming off a huge victory last week, coming into a matchup against Ryder and Rawley. I expected, Dawson and Wilder to pick up another big victory, because if the victory here just determines that NXT is going to full force in developing Dawson and Wilder as potential the next NXT champions. Say, for example, Blake and Murphy need to drop the titles. I think Dawson and Wilder are the guys right there that deserves it. You can't really say make much of a case for Enzo and Cass, as there's a rumor going on right now that Enzo and Cass are going to be called up to the main roster. I'm not confirming it. I've read something about it on a dirt sheet a couple of weeks ago. That's why NXT did not want to put the titles on Cass or Enzo right now. They're still weighing in their options. Maybe Enzo and Cass could remain down at NXT for a while. I know a lot of people are not a big fan of Enzo and Cass going up to the main roster right now. I think that they can really get by the fans up at the main roster right now. But the tag team division right now in NXT NXT has not seen anything new. We saw Blake and Murphy. We get Enzo and Cass. The Lucha Dragons are now up at the main roster. There's just not a new tag team on the scene. We got 2 new tag teams now in Dawson Wilder and the Hype Bros. I don't expect the Hype Bros to really do much, but Dawson Wilder has been putting a big impact on the past couple of weeks, and last week's victory in their tag team match last week was a big sign that there's a lot of more interesting things to come from this team. They did lose to the Hype Bros, which I think is going to be a step back from their hype from last week's victory. But following the matchup, they continue to make an impact. They did attack, Ryder and Raleigh. They did their finisher maneuver. I don't know what it was. I know last week I said it. I did not write it down here, but they did their, their tag team finisher maneuver on Zack Ryder, and that ultimately puts a huge impact on Dawson and Wilder's, potential for, the coming weeks. I think we can see more Dawson and Wilder. They are a dominant tag team. They have that kind of, redneck look to them. They don't, just because they have a beard, it does not mean they're always a redneck, but they're not built as a redneck. I know that, I think Dawson just has the cowboy boots, but Wilder does not really much look like a redneck. He looks like an average, in-ring competitor that can have big things, but Dawson really brings it out. But they apparently their whole gimmick's supposed to be like these, these Texan guys, these redneck guys that's gonna end up brawling around NXT in the tag team division. So very excited for Dawson and Wilder to really make a big impact in the coming weeks. Hopefully we get to get them involved into something with Blake and Murphy in the future. I think those two, these 4 competitors can make a good tag team matchup, and hopefully we can see more of that. As for the Hype Bros, I don't really know where to go from with them. I know Zack Ryder has not been my favorite competitor to watch for years on end now. Mojo Rawley, I think he still deserves to have that singles run. I'm not saying he can be like an NXT champion or anything like that. I think he can be a few years down the line, could be like a Ryback kind of role, a dominant figure. He's huge, he's muscular, he can make a huge impact. I think that could be a Mojo Rawley, up at the main roster. But right now they have him as a part of the Hype Bros. What better way to be helping your career than being a part of Zack Ryder as a part of the Hype Bros. I mean, I like the whole Mojo Rawley. I can see Mojo Rawley even as a heel running at the main roster right now, but I'll get into that here in a future video. I want to let you guys go before that we get into our final matchup on the day, or on the night from last night. We got Rhino versus Samoa Joe. Like I said, there was a TNA reunion here. Samoa Joe versus Rhino. Samoa Joe, as the past month or so, has headlined NXT 2 or 3 times. I know last week we got the Vaudevillains taking on in that tag team match against Blake and Murphy. That was also assigned for NXT Takeover Brooklyn. But Samoa Joe and Rhino, I was like, I'm not going to be seeing a lot of that. There's nothing really enough progress here because we've seen this match happen 1,000 times over in TNA. There was a lot of tests of strength in this match, a lot of shoulder blocks. It was just an average, main event. Samoa Joe went over clean. I want to see Samoa Joe involved in a storyline. Since making his impact in NXT at the last Takeover event, Samoa Joe has yet to be involved in the storyline. The only closest thing to a storyline that he has was staring down Kevin Owens. I have not really seen much of Samoa Joe on the mic. I want to see some sort of Samoa Joe storyline involved before he gets up to the main roster. He should be up at the main roster, by the end of the year. I think Samoa Joe going down to NXT. Yes, the toughest competition right now is in NXT. You got all the best superstars that are going to be taking over the WWE in the months to come, the years to come, and Samoa Joe, who has made the biggest impact in NXT ever, and now he's just taken on veterans of past success in the WWE. I love Rhino, but Rhino is just is like a trainer down at NXT now, I think is what his role is. But he's also given some of the younger guys some in-ring time with veterans. I don't want to see Samoa Joe be reduced to that role. I want to see something huge. Kevin Owens, following this whole Finn Balor issue, maybe we can end up seeing, a Samoa Joe versus Kevin Owens, segment down at NXT. But I don't think Kevin Owens deserves to be down at NXT. He deserves to be primarily up at the main roster. So that's where it gets into a big clusterfuck, because right now Samoa Joe doesn't have anything for him. No storyline-wise down at NXT as it stands. All that he is just closing out TV shows. Against, either Rhino this week, next week, we can end up getting Jesse Sorensen coming back. We can end up getting, a Steve Cutler coming back and Samoa Joe dominating him. The best thing for me to see right now from Samoa Joe is Samoa Joe versus Baron Corbin. I think that will be a fantastic way to go about it. It will test Baron Corbin to the limits, and not only that, we will get an excellent match between two big Goliaths down in NXT right now, two dominating figures in NXT in Baron Corbin and Samoa Joe. Added to the NXT Takeover card, it just ups the ante just a little bit more. But at the end of the day, at the end of the show yesterday, Samoa Joe did defeat Rhino via the Muscle Buster, and securing the victory, Samoa Joe, and continue his dominance down in NXT. So there you guys have it. That is your NXT Takeover, your NXT Wrestling review for August 5th. 2015. We were just a couple of weeks out from the NXT Takeover show, and also SummerSlam. Very exciting time to be a professional wrestling fan right now. I know my good friend Graham Gias and Matthews would agree with me. NXT next week, we got Bayley versus Becky Lynch for the #1 contendership for Sasha Banks' women's championship down at NXT. So hopefully we get to see Bayley defeat Becky Lynch. That's just my prediction. I want to see Bayley bring that that title back into the spotlight down at NXT and have her beat the queen, the rightful queen of NXT, of the NXT women's division. Hopefully we could see some more great matches from Bayley, and hopefully we do get to see a stellar matchup between Bayley and Becky Lynch next week. Hands down, Charlotte Bayley is my match of the week, easily. One of the best women's matches I've seen in this entire year. So hopefully we can see another great performance by Bayley next week against Becky Lynch. Make sure you guys leave your guys' comments down below about this week's show down below. My name is Justin Godsey for Total Sports Radio. I'll catch you guys in my next